First of all, I'd like to thank all of you to make it to a Friday morning session. That really takes determination, so thank you all, and welcome to App-solute testing. Today we're going to talk about testing your mobile apps with Akamai features, essentially. So this is not a session on best practices of mobile testing. I'm sure all of you are aware of those. We are going to talk to you about specifically how you can test the different features and products that you would have seen in the last couple of days with Akamai. So getting right into it, quick introduction. I'm Arunyal. I work as a services enablement manager for media products globally. What that means is that I am a liaison between products and engineering and the global services and support organization in Akamai, and I'm responsible for strategies in terms of product development, so that they're developing products that both the global services and services organization and customers can use easily. So they are easily integrable, supportable, testable, things like that. And I have my colleague Sharat.
Hey.
He leads the EMEA service delivery organization, and he also works on media customers. So he helps customers integrate and get them on board. So he's an expert on testing. So just going through the agenda quickly, we're going to briefly introduce mobile app testing in the real world, what that means. We're going to talk about how you can test your mobile applications in Akamai. We are going to talk about some real world examples. So we're going to take some of the things that you would have learned, the map SDK, the new ION features, media acceleration and efficiency. How can you really test it with your mobile applications? How can you see that that's working? And finally, we leave you with, and this is, I'm sure you would have, there have been a few sessions on this, which is on the mobile application review and some of the best practices that you can do both on your applications and Akamai. We'll leave you with a summary slide. We're not going to spend too much time there. So mobile app testing, just sort of building why this is so important and why we have a session on it is because we've got like 5 billion unique mobile users. That's the latest study I read, and it's almost about 50% of the traffic on the internet now is mobile. So it's front and center. Mobile apps are front and center. We want to deliver the end users the fastest, most secure experience, and Akamai products can help you do that. You would have heard about that in the past few days, but it's equally important that we continuously innovate and we're able to deploy faster. We're able to build those cool features into our apps faster, and we're also able to use the Akamai ecosystem and the features and products we have and help you build this out to your customers faster. And for that, testing smartly and really quickly becomes vital, and today's session is all about that. So like I said, how do you test your mobile application? Right now, like functional testing is something that I'm sure all of you are aware of. You know how to do that. You write functional test cases. I love shoes, so e-commerce app, I want to search. I write gesture-based testing, a functional test case, I put it on a simulator, or as experts now are really sort of pushing for real device testing. So you use things like Bitbar or Appium, the framework, or if you want to do performance testing, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of SourceStar offering, but that helps you in load testing, performance testing, and so that's something that you do. But with Akamai, the things, it changes because it's not really only about functional testing, but it's also about feature testing of the feature that you're using on Akamai. And if you have a web application or even a hybrid application, it's easier because you can test it on your browser and you can look at the HTTP header and response. You can look at things like packet capture, and you can do all of that. But on your mobile applications, it's not that easy. You can't look at it directly, and that's why you need something called a proxy, and Charles is an example of that. So what is a proxy? I'm assuming most of you know what what a proxy is, what Charles is, but for those of you who don't know this, I'm going to go through it really quickly. In a regular client-server interaction, you have a request and you have a response. So a client, your web application or your mobile application sends a request to a server, which in this case, in this particular use case, would be Akamai, and Akamai would send a response. But when you have a mobile application, what is a proxy? So a proxy is essentially somebody who's sitting in between the client and the server and listening to what the client and server are saying. So the request and response basically goes through this particular proxy, and it's able to then intercept and read what's happening between, so what went into the request and what went into the response. So in your mobile application scenario, your mobile application is the client, the server remains Akamai, but then your proxy would be anything that's running any proxy client that you choose to. So we are predominantly going to talk about Charles, but you can use Fiddler for Windows and so on and so forth. So Charles would be running on either your laptop or any machine that you choose to run it on, and it's basically will then have the ability to read traffic between the mobile application and the server. The only thing that you need to be aware of while you're testing like this is that your mobile application and Charles should be on the same network. So it should be on the same Wi-Fi, same LAN, it should be on the same network. That's the only way that would Charles would be able to pick up that traffic. So this is an example of how it would look, and we'll talk more specifically into each of Akamai feature specific scenarios. So how can you set this up? This is an example of an Android device. You just need to go into your settings, you need to modify your network settings, and you need to change the proxy hostname and proxy port. Your proxy hostname would be the IP address of the laptop you're running this on, or the machine that you're running this on, and the proxy port would be the port that Charles is running on. Usually it's installed on 8888. You can change that port to whatever you want, but that's what you need to change on the mobile device you want to test your application on. You can also read SSL traffic. All you need to do is enable the SSL proxying settings. Charles helps you do this in a very, very simple manner, and you need to enable traffic on port 443. The other thing that you need to do is the mobile device that you're using to test needs to have the Charles certificate, because Charles is in the middle, so the Charles will be doing the SSL termination. So you can download the certificate from the Charles website. So those are the two things you need to do: enable it on the proxy on the device the Charles running, enable the setting, and download the certificate, and you will be able to read encrypted, or you will be able to read the HTTP header responses and requests even for your encrypted traffic, which is now the norm. Now that you understand what Charles is, how you can sort of set it up to test your mobile applications, I want to touch upon briefly about some general Akamai testing concepts. These have nothing to do with mobile or web. These are concepts on Akamai that you use to test your features. So the first one is the difference between staging and production. Your account teams would probably keep talking to you about staging and production networks. I just want to call out the differences. So the production network is essentially the network that you use right now at Akamai. The different products that you're using, it doesn't matter whether you're using Ion or All Media Delivery or whatever you're using on Akamai. Anything that you're using to serve to your customers, that traffic is being served by our production network. So this is highly scalable, highly distributed, highly reliable. So this is the live production network. We also have another network, which is our staging network. Now think of it as our QA network. It's got the same servers, it's just that the number is way smaller. It's a few hundred servers globally distributed for you to do functional testing. So you can test any changes that you're making on your applications, irrespective of Akamai. You want to see how those changes are interacting with your Akamai configurations. You can use this network to test those changes. The other thing, the many years I've been here, and some of my customers have done this, this is not meant for performance testing. So if you've done performance tweaks to your app, test it on the production network. Don't test it on staging, because you'll not be able to see the performance benefits, because it's like a few hundred servers. Like I said, like how you would have an SQA network, this is Akamai's SQA network for you to do functional testing, both for your app changes as well as configuration changes. This is not an Akamai concept, but spoofing is critical for you to do any sort of testing on Akamai in a limited fashion. Spoofing basically means you point your traffic or whatever from your machine to a specific server, and you do that by changing the host file. You can spoof to the different networks that I just covered by doing an NS lookup or a dig on your host names that Akamai gives you to CNAME. So when you've set up something on Akamai, either a web property or a mobile app, you need to CNAME the traffic onto Akamai. So Akamai will give you a host name which would look like something.hkey.net or something.hsuite.net, depending on whether you're serving traffic over SSL or if you're serving traffic over HTTP. For staging, if you want to get your staging IP that's closest to you, all you need to do is hyphenate it with a hyphen staging, and it will give you the closest staging server IP. So you need to get this IP, put the host name that you're testing, and put the IP address in your host file, and then you're sending traffic to that particular server. Another way for you to look at ensuring that you are hitting a staging server is that you can look for this particular response header, which is X Akamai staging. For ESSL, ESSL is the SSL network that Akamai has. It will have the ESSL value. If it's non-ESSL, it will have the HSuite value. This is again a best practice that we follow in professional services at Akamai. We will always insist that every time you make a change on your Akamai configuration, you test it on the staging environment, and once you feel that you've run all your test cases, your functional test cases that you've written, you think that everything's working, then you deploy it on the production environment, you watch it go live, and then you test it on your production environment. In case of a new property, you then make the CNAME change, use a low DNS TTL, so that if something goes wrong, you can revert the changes, or otherwise, if you've already CNAMEd, that's pretty much it. The final thing that I'm going to talk to you about are Pragma headers. If you're not aware of Pragma headers, these are a very strong tool for you to use, both for your mobile applications as well as your web applications. Pragma headers are basically Akamai request headers that you can send in your HTTP request, and the response will give you a lot of information on everything that's happening in your configuration, right from your cache keys to TTL settings to if you're doing some redirects, if you're doing some variable manipulation on your Akamai configuration, the response will give you all of that. So some of the examples of Pragma headers are here. I will touch upon one of them. We'll go into more details as we go into specific features, and then we'll show you the values that you need to look at. So for example, looking at the X cache key will give you the unique way Akamai is storing your object onto our network. The cache key gives you the value, will show you the path at which the object is stored, and it will also give you the TTL. So it gives you, like I said, the unique value at which your object is stored on the Akamai cache. And if you're doing any sort of cache key manipulations, for example, if you're adding query strings, because you're doing geographical based caching, you're serving some, you're serving different content to different geos, and you're changing that on Akamai, this will help you get all that information as well. Similarly, the session info one here is extremely important. Like I said, any sort of manipulations that you are doing onto the Akamai configuration, it shows you here, like for example, if you have RUM enabled for real user monitoring, or if you have any other, if you're doing some redirects, or if you're doing failover logic, all of that is captured here, and you can see whether it's getting triggered or not. So now that you know what Charles is, what a proxy is, how you can set it up for your mobile applications, you know some basics of Akamai testing, how you can test your mobile and web applications. We're going to get into the specifics of testing your mobile applications with Akamai features, and I'll invite Sharath to talk about that now.
Thanks, Haru. All right, so just before I proceed, I just want to check if we have any questions so far. All good. Thank you. Okay, so we know that this is the process to follow when we have to test the applications on the desktop, right? But can we do the same for mobile apps? Unfortunately, no. But why? Because the tester has to have the access to the DNS host file, and you cannot modify that for a mobile app, right? So to do that, but how do we proceed with the testing then, right? So as a first step, this is where our superhero Charles comes for the rescue. We have the DNS spoofing tool here, with which you can enter the host name and the staging server IP address or the production server IP address. And once you save this, Charles will make sure that the traffic will flow on the IP that you put in here. So you don't have to deal with the host file at all. As a step 2, it's important to send the right headers for the mobile app testing. So, and to do that, we have a rewrite tool in Charles. So with this rewrite tool, we can send the new headers, or we can modify any existing header as well here. And you can also make sure that it runs for a specific URL or for both HTTP and HTTPS. So with this, you are able to send any new headers or in fact modify custom headers. Up next, so once we have sent the right headers, it's important to look at the response and the right responses. So for example, caching, we can get such a response, and if you zoom it in a bit, you get to see the pragma headers that she just spoke about, right? So and in fact, these 3 steps are very important and specific to mobile app testing, because you cannot do this without a proxy. It is not possible to do this, right? So it is very important to be specific about the mobile app testing and to use the Charles proxy for this. So so now that we have seen how to test the mobile app for Akamai, we'll pick a few examples. We'll see a few features and how actually you can go ahead and test them. So to start with, we'll start with the basic ones like caching. So how do we test caching? So we use the rewrite tool. We send the pragma request headers. We look at a few caching related headers like xcache, right? So TCP hit means that the response is served from the Akamai cache. If it is TCP miss, it means that it got the response from the origin. So in fact, there are multiple values that this can hold, and that you can find in the documentation as well. Up next, we have the xtrue cache key, wherein we can see the TTL or the time to live for the cache that the response is being stored for. And in this case, it is 30D or 30 days, but it can vary. And of course, the cache key doesn't guarantee that it's going to get cached for 30 days, but it's the starting point and the first thing to look at. Next, we have the excheck cacheable. So in this case, if it is yes, so it means that it is the response is cacheable. If it is no, then it cannot be cached. A few things or a few points to remember here is, so if you have to test caching, you need to look at testing for the no store responses. So what does it mean is that, are you actually caching all the static resources? And if yes, are you caching all the static resources for the right extent of time? So it is very important to look at the caching amount of time for all the caching, for all the static resources as well. Second is about the API responses, and specifically for mobile apps, it's extremely important to cache your API responses. You can have a completely cacheable API response, you can have a non-cacheable response, but that's okay. But if you have a partially cacheable response, make sure you code it in such a way that you split that API into two calls, one response that can be fully cached, the other which cannot be cached. So in that way, you are making the most out of the Akamai platform. Next, we need to look at, we need to test for the cache key pollution, in the sense, are you storing the same object under the two cache keys in the Akamai cache, right? So it's important to check for the cache key as well. Next, we'll have a look at how to test HTTP2 for mobile apps. And as you know, in the past 2-3 days, HTTP2 is extremely critical and especially important for the mobile apps. It helps you with the compression of the HTTP headers. It also helps you to free up sockets for more connections, right? So to test this, we have to look at the protocol field in the Charles session, right? And you need to open up this overview section and the protocol field. And of course, this particular UI is Charles 4.0. So the UI can probably be changing, but the essence is the same. Next, we'll see how to test compression. Compression for mobile is critical, right? So it is very, very, very important. So it's extremely important that the mobile app should advertise that it can accept compressed responses. So for that, you need to send the right compression headers like accept encoding. So to tell the Akamai platform that yes, I can read the compressed response. And Akamai will compress, and you need to test for the content encoding headers, where it tells that yes, it is compressed in gzip. So in this way, you are making sure that the mobile app gets the compressed responses that it needs, especially under the varying network conditions that you have today. Up next, we'll have a look at a few advanced scenarios and how to test them. Your mobile app can have the end users from across the globe, right? And they might be in India, they might be in US with varying network conditions and the setups. So, but how do we test sitting in Wi-Fi? How do we test the mobile app performance and experience sitting in Wi-Fi? How do we test the mobile app performance of a person with 2G or 3G? This is where the throttling tool in Charles comes into the picture. So we have multiple presets in Charles. You can use 3G, 4G, 2G, and in fact Wi-Fi. And once you save this, your mobile app will behave as though it is under this particular 3G or 2G preset. So in that case, you exactly can test how the app performs with those network conditions. Next, we'll talk about another feature which is extremely important given the varying network conditions, and that is mobile app performance and map SDK. And you might be hearing this from the past 2-3 days a lot. This has some really good kick-ass features, which is extremely important for mobile app. And this particular SDK is available for Android and iOS. But how do you know that the integration of the SDK is successful, right? So you need to know how it is successful. So to check that, you have to check out this particular header, the Akamai mobile connectivity. This is a request header that the SDK sends automatically once the integration is successful. And of course, the Akamai will respond back with the pragma header x Akamai session info. You just need to look out for AMC_string. So if this is there, it means that yes, Akamai is understanding whatever the integration is done and it's successful. So yes, it's a very good thing to look at. Next, we'll have a look at another feature called media acceleration and efficiency. So this is, so it can be OTT video, it can be games, it can be downloads, it doesn't matter. This is the feature for you that's going to help. So this works over quick protocol and especially UDP. But and in fact, this is also an SDK which is available for Android, iOS, and JavaScript. Okay, so you got the SDK, you integrate it, but how do we test it again, right? So for a web app, we can always look at the Chrome DevTools, and in Chrome DevTools, you get to see the protocol field. So, and you need to enable the protocol field in the DevTools by right-clicking on the header here. And once you enable the protocol field, you will be able to see that HTTP2 plus quick is on. So this means that yes, the client-side connection is working on quick protocol. But for mobile apps, we need to look at the response header called alt svc. And if you see here, we have the quick, right? So this will tell you that yes, quick is running from Akamai and client, right? So it is successful. So the integration is good. All right, so I just want to take a moment here to just pause and check if there are any questions. All right. Up next, we'll, so just another thing to mention is that, of course, you can also enable the logging for the Android app, and you need to switch on the set log level to debug. If it's an iOS app, you need to look at the Apple system log and the NS logs to make sure that quick is running fine. So up next, we all know the image manager, right? So image manager automatically transforms a website's or a mobile app's original images or the pristine images and creates the derivatives of the various sizes and formats, and it dynamically chooses the right image to the end user and it sends it over. So how do we test this? In fact, to set up the image manager, it is at the Akamai config level. You need to create the policies. But once you have done that, how do we test it, right? So for Chrome, we have a client called, we have a plugin called as PIEZ. With that, you can test the web application if the image manager is working fine. But for mobile applications, we don't have that. We have to check the pragma response headers. We have to check all the IM underscore related headers. So this is going to give you a lot of information, like the IM policy that got applied, if it is working on staging, if the format is for Chrome, and in fact, all these headers will tell you if the served image was the original image or if it was the derivative image. So we need to look at the pragma headers for the mobile app to test the image manager. Next, we have the media analytics. So understanding the viewer behavior, understanding the quality of service of your streams, be it live or on demand, is extremely important to understand the customer stream viewing experience, right? So, and to do this, we have this media analytics, which will give you the simple and complex reports, which will give you the insight to take important decisions such as monetization and to prioritize your marketing efforts and so on. So this product gives you the simple and complex reports. So to do that, we have a plugin, and you need to integrate that plugin with your player. And to test if the player integration with the plugin is working fine, we need to look at the HTTP request. So when do we get this HTTP request? So when you play or pause a video in your mobile app, you can see a corresponding HTTP request with the media analytics host name in your Charles proxy. And of course, you need to also look at the query parameters here, and that exactly is the data that is being sent to our servers, which will ultimately get translated into reports, right? And what do we mean by A equal to V, B equal to something? So all this information is given in the beacon config XML that is provided to you during the plugin integration. So in this, you get to see what those key and the value, the key and the name means, right? So with this, we are able to test the media analytics fine. And if you are not able to see the reports in the Luna Control Center, the first place you need to check is this. So if the data is sent, it means that the data is there on the reports as well. All right, so next we can have, do you want to test a particular API because you have a sale coming up and you want to see how it performs with increasing load, right? So you want to identify that, and we can do that with the repeat and the advanced repeat tools in Charles. So what we can do, we can identify the API, and that is behind the important testing scenarios. And once you identify those APIs, you can repeat by increasing the load, and you know how the API performs with increasing load. And of course, you can use this with the JMeter tool, and you can run the regression testing and performance testing. But to identify the right APIs, this is a tool for you. All right. So, and with this, I just want to take a pause to check if there are any questions before I hand it over to Aru.
In order to use map,
Right.
do you need to compile the map SDK to your application that can use it?
Yes.
What's the size of SDK?
So it actually varies for the Android and for the iOS and even for JavaScript, but I think it's there in the Luna Control Center support guide as well.
I'm sorry?
It's there in the Luna Control Center. So if you go to the support link, in that you get access to the documentation guides. In that you can access the map SDK there, and the sizes will in fact vary because there are multiple features coming in, but I don't think it should be more than a couple of.
So it depends on, there are 4 features, and then there are some customizations that you can do as well. So it depends on what features you're using, and that sort of varies the size of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can, if you want to know more details, you can visit us at the experts bar, and we can talk about that a little
Sure.
bit more.
All right. So I would like to pass the ball back to Aru. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharad. So we're pretty much done with the testing piece. If you have any specific questions on any other feature or anything else, these are just, this is just something that we wanted to draw your attention to. I'm sure you guys would have attended this session and heard on the keynote that when Craig mentioned using mPulse to review your applications. I hope you signed up for it, and it's a great tool. The screenshot that I have on is not of mPulse though. The screenshot that I have on is of another tool that we are using internally to help you review your applications. So how your applications are performing, what type of content it has, do you have like API blockers, what and all of that, response times, load times, all of that. And we can help you do this. So if you reach out to your account teams, they can actually help get your app reviewed and send you reports and talk you through what are the things that you can do at Akamai and what are the things that you potentially can do with your application. So we are using Headspin to do this. But you can also, like I said, definitely use mPulse. mPulse is over a period of time, so that's metrics, and you have to send traffic over it and do it. But this is something that you can just use as a tool to see how your application is doing, and then when you fix something, write test cases based on what you're fixing or what you need to fix. Finally, we leave you with some best practices. The things that you need to check your application for are the following. Whether the simplest one there is if you have any non-Akamized domains for performance, that's the easiest thing to do, is to Akamize them. And the other one that we see very often is critical versus non-critical APIs. Are you calling like something, or even JavaScripts, are you calling things that are not that critical for your mobile application to load like early on? So look at that sequencing and change that, and then there are a bunch of things over there. Are you looking at image and video compression, for example? Again, Akamai products can help you with some of that. Then what are some of the things that we recommend that you check your Akamai configuration for? So again, here the thing that I like to call out, we've sort of covered the first few, is how are you doing your error handling on your mobile applications as well? Are you using Akamai to do it? Yeah, we just think of web applications, and by default we use Akamai failover, but are we using Akamai to do that for your mobile apps? Of course, if it is a problem at the mobile side where it's not even able to connect to the internet, that's going to be difficult with Akamai, but other use cases you can definitely look at doing redirects at edge. And the final thing that I'll really talk about is proper logging. It's very important to do that within your applications and also on Akamai, so ensure that your LDS logs are spinning for your mobile applications as well, because sometimes that server-side data is really critical and helps us troubleshoot and help you troubleshoot faster. Okay, that's all we had. Any questions? All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you, and please don't forget to go back and provide the feedback. And if you have any questions, please feel free to visit us today at the expert bar, and we'll take you through these. Thank you.